Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're breaking down the new War Strider enemy that was just added with the new bot Mega City update. And with the amount of aura this thing has when it walks in, I think it has to be one of the coolest enemies, if not the coolest enemy in the entire game. And actually completely changes the way we fight the bots when we do see it. So lighting this off, we're diving right into its advanced stat line. This is a beta guide until like a full data mine is done on the enemy, but if you go in and shoot at all of the spots that I have listed here, you should get close to the same results that I did. This guide was also updated on stream and in my Discord last night, along with all of the other enemy changes, so make sure you join if you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing. The entire testing bot is also linked down below if you need to see that, but it's a very important to note that this entire metal beast is AP4 all over its body, which means you need heavy penetration no matter where you shoot it. Usually bots have some sort of very notable AP3 weak point, like a glowing heat sink or eyes, so the first thing I did was shoot it in the eye with a recoilless rifle, and it did nothing. This has the same HP as the body and is not worth shooting at, so like a lot of the walkie boys, our main weak spot that we're going to be going for is the upper leg plate, because it's extremely easy to hit with pretty much every gun that you're going to want to shoot at it. This thing also dies very quickly to any kind of heavy anti-tank penetration that you throw at it, so things like the Quasar cannon, EAT, and the recoilless rifle are all going to one-shot the meaty parts of its legs, and the commando is going to take 2 rockets. The peen plate that connects the legs to the main body also has about the same health pool as the legs, so that's also worth blasting and is extremely easy to hit, but the absolute weakest part of this enemy is also kind of hard to hit, and it's the connecting joint between the legs and the peen. You can only really see it from certain angles, and it can be really hard to hit when it's like bobbing up and down. Like when this thing's charging at you to CC you to death, it has a little bit of a spring to its step. But if you can hit that little leg joint, it has about half of the health of the legs and the peen. So when you have precision weapons like the last cannon and the anti-material rifle, you absolutely rip this thing to shreds when you lock in on it. So if you have the chance, this is the fastest, easiest kill, but for the vast majority of the time, you just want to blast the entire waist section of this thing and just make sure you avoid shooting at that big chest piece. Even the back of it isn't weak, and it will eat an entire recoil shot, but it won't eat 3 commandos. So it's balanced to be just above that on purpose, and unironically, the spear is actually pretty good at killing these things. One important thing to keep in mind is that this thing is extremely durable everywhere that you're shooting at it, so things like the HMG and the last cannon take roughly an entire magazine to take it down, unless you really lock in on that leg joint. So my biggest tip is if you like bringing AP4 weapons, to just blast that down in the main peen plate. From the front to the back, it has the same health pool, unlike the legs that are individual, and this thing likes to turn a lot, making it hard to focus down a single leg or joint sometimes. You can also blow the weapons off this thing fairly easily, but unlike normal bots, this thing barely does any damage with its arsenal, especially if you equip fortified armor for the explosive resistance, because all of the damage that it deals is explosive, and everything that it throws at you is just CC or ragdoll spam. So the 2 railgun looking things that it have just spam shots off that make you fall over and barely hurt you, that seem to only be able to shoot like about 25 to like 50 meters and are only really effective under 25 meters. So if you space this thing out, it is extremely easy to deal with. But the big selling point, and the thing that I thought was probably the coolest thing about the entire enemy, is that it has these 2 massive grenade launchers on its back, and it just rains out a ton of high explosive grenades, and it completely shuts down an area. And it is honestly one of the cooler attacks that any enemies has in the entire game. So you can choose to either run away from the grenade barrage or spam throw them all back like a hero. You know what you need to do. Now, because the weapons are also AP4, I don't really think they're worth shooting at to break off. It'll just be faster to rip the leg joint off most of the time, and you can usually do that even with the HMG before the grenades blow up most of the time. The damage transfer to the main health pool from blowing the guns up also didn't really seem that great when they did break, but it is really funny to see this thing just kind of walk up and try to step on you after you blast everything off of it. So now that you know the best possible ways to bring this mechanical machination down, some of you might have had the problem where you barely see it in the first place and you really want to go fight it. But that is because it only spawns on specific spawn seeds, some people call them constellations, and very specific missions. So if you do want to fight the new enemy, you are looking for berserker focused seeds, and you want to avoid anything that has a heavy amount of tanks. You either get one or the other in the new mega cities, like you're either going to see a ton of tanks or you're going to see a ton of War Striders. And the main missions that I found them in were the sabotage supply bases, CTF, and eradicate. These were like 50-50 on all of them. You either saw a ton of tanks or you saw a ton of War Striders. There really was no in between. I really do think they should make it so War Striders are probably part of all of the base spawn seeds, but either way, on the non-defense planets, I had some good luck on the nuke launch maps, and these spawn seed guides are also kept up to date in my Discord whenever there is a big change to them, so That's always going to be updated for you guys. I've made sure of that basically ever since EOF came out. But now we have some quick tips so that these things never catch you off guard. And even though this thing doesn't deal a ton of damage, it's meant to push you out of your position so the other bots can cook you up. So if you ignore it, they will cause a ton of problems for you. Plus, getting CC spammed is kind of annoying, so I put this thing very high on my kill priority list, but because it has such limited range, that can change depending on what anti-tank weapons you brought. And usually not a lot of these things spawn, so removing them means they won't get replaced super quickly, and it makes it fairly easy to clean everything else up. But if you do find yourself getting pressed by a ton of bots, just make sure that you have this thing pinged so you know how far away it is, and try cutting back about 30 meters so you're just out of range where like it becomes really deadly. And the best times to either charge headfirst into this thing or retreat are during the grenade barrage, because you have a couple of seconds once those all go off that you can reposition and it's not really going to do anything else. And keep in mind, if you do rush in on 2 or more of these things, you're going to have a bad time. Now, probably the most important tip that I could give anybody about the new War Strider is that it has this perfect little platform on top of it that you can just hover pack perfectly onto. So if you need a new mobile base of operations, feel free to make this mech the one you always dreamed you would be able to drive around yourself. Moving on to the best possible weapons I found for dealing with these things that fit into the majority of bot loadouts, just for fluidity so that you can take pretty much whatever you want in. Start with the thermite grenade. This has always been one of the best overall grenades for the bots, and it only takes one anywhere on the leg or the body to take this thing down. Plus, it's really good for the rest of the tanks, factory striders, and fabricators, so it's just a super safe pick across the board. The ultimatum is also extremely valuable because these things just rush straight at you, so it's very easy to one-shot them with it, and it's also really good for tanks and striders. Finally, the recoilless rifle is just always going to be the GOAT when it comes to a faction that's just throwing a ton of heavies at you. The on-demand removal for every enemy that can cause a death spiral always feels basically perfect to take in. Just keep in mind that you will be very ammo hungry with it now, but taking any of these 3 things into around your build out will feel really good. I personally love blasting with things like the HMG and the last cannon, so I'm going to be leaning towards thermite, but a lot of people were also asking me about the eruptor because it is pretty much like, I think, a lot of people's favorite weapons for the bots. It is really good at chaff control, killing like pretty much everything that isn't War Striders. But if that's your only thing that you're taking in to kill the War Striders, I don't think you're going to have a very good time with it. And I think that's also everything you need to know about the new War Strider and all of its counters. I personally think this enemy was a great addition to the boss because it isn't spam CCing you from across the map. It aggressively pushes you, and like it does spam CC you. Again, when there's more than one, it does get pretty bad, but it's nothing even close to what launch gunships or the cringe turrets are on the mega bases. I can still definitely see it being annoying in some situations, though. There were a few times that I didn't get to play the game for a while, but that was usually when there was more than one of them, and I was basically in melee range trying to disrespect it. I also don't really like that it doesn't have a glaring weak spot like the rest of the bots. I feel like any of the large lads should have some sort of glowing tail because it really just fits the faction. Like, when I look at a factory strider, that glowing eye, it's like, okay, I want to shoot that. And when I see that on this thing, not having like a heat sink on the back or that, it does feel a little bit weird, but maybe it's balanced around those little leg joints being the prime weak spots, and because it doesn't have like an insanely lethal loadout to take you down instantly, and it's just a CC bot. Maybe that's what the devs were thinking with that. I'm not really too sure on that, but basically, I think if I was going to rate the enemy, it'd be like a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10 function-wise, changing the way that we play the bots, and it's just a 10 out of 10 cool-wise. This is honestly the coolest enemy in the entire game. I used to think that Annihilator tanks and Bile Titans were like, and Harvesters too, like they're all insanely cool, but I think that this just one-upped all of them for me. So let me know how you guys are feeling about this like new war robot. I just love it. I think that it just changed the game enough that like this shadow drop was actually really good, and I think over time it'll definitely be a better addition to the game if they add it to more spawn seeds. I also think that like one cool thing that could happen is because these new mechs are so close to the original concept art for mechs and they just look amazing, that we could start stripping them down for parts and upgrade our mechs so they don't suck anymore. This could just be the mech we dreamed of, and I really hope that's the long-term outcome of this. But if you do feel like I missed something, or if you have any tips and tricks that you think other people should know that I didn't cover, please just let me know so that I can update my guides and just help everybody out. But that's going to be all for now, and I hope y'all have an amazing night. I can't shoot it with that. Can I both thermite? Uh-oh.